All right, so picture this. It's September, and you're itching to get your hands on the latest iPhone.
Right.
Like, it's almost a tradition at this point.
Like clockwork.
Exactly. But what if I told you Apple might be throwing that whole yearly release schedule out the window?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a real head-scratcher and potentially a game-changer for how Apple operates, which, let's be real, impacts pretty much, well, everything tech.
It's true. They've had that iron grip on September for so long.
Right. So to dive into this, we're looking at this Bloomberg article, and I gotta say, Mark Gurman, the author, the guy's practically got his ear glued to Tim Cook's door.
Yeah, he always seems to have the inside scoop on these things.
Exactly. And he's saying that cracks are starting to show in this yearly cycle, that Apple's moving toward what he calls a more fluid approach to releasing products.
Interesting way to put it. Fluid. Not exactly the word that springs to mind when you think of Apple. They're usually all about precision, that whole release date etched in stone vibe.
That's a good point. They've always been so regimented, so this is a pretty big deal if it's true.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, why now? What's changed? I mean, for years, that rigid schedule, that was like Apple's secret weapon. They'd announce a new iPhone like clockwork, and everyone would go crazy for it. Investors knew exactly when to expect the next big thing, and it created this massive marketing frenzy.
Don't forget about us, the consumers. We got used to that cycle, too.
Oh, absolutely. But think about it. A new iPhone every September. Guaranteed. It motivated their teams. It kept investors happy because they knew what was coming. And it created this massive marketing event that everyone looked forward to.
Okay, so we get it. The yearly schedule worked for them for a long time.
Exactly. But to understand why this potential shift is such a big deal, we need to unpack why that annual schedule was so successful in the first place.
I'm with you, so let's break it down.
All right, so picture this. It's a few years ago, and you're thinking about getting a new Apple product. Your biggest dilemma is probably deciding between an iPhone or an iPod.
Simpler times.
Right. But fast forward to today. The sheer number of products they've got now is mind-boggling. iPhones, iPads, Macs in every shape and size.
Yeah.
AirPods, the Apple Watch, you name it, they probably make it.
Talk about an embarrassment of riches.
Right, exactly. And trying to stick to a rigid yearly release schedule for every single one of those product lines is starting to become, well, a bit of a logistical nightmare. It's like they've gone from a carefully curated tasting menu to, well, an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to manage all of that, keeping everything fresh and exciting on an annual basis, it's a tall order.
And it's not even just about the sheer volume of products, is it? Like, some of them, it just doesn't make sense to update every single year, right?
You're right. Take the Apple Watch Ultra, for example. I mean, it's already top of the line, designed for extreme athletes and adventurers. Do they really need to release a new version every year?
Good point.
Or take the iPhone SE. It's Apple's more affordable iPhone option, a great entry point for budget-conscious consumers. But does it really need a flashy new model every September? Probably not.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking about the whole iPadOS 18 debacle while reading this article. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, that was a rough one. So many bugs, performance issues. People were pulling their hair out.
Seriously. And what's interesting is that Gurman seems to suggest that this whole trying to do everything at once approach might actually be hurting Apple's products.
Interesting. So you're saying it's possible all this pressure to release new versions on a tight schedule is actually leading to lower quality.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's like they're sacrificing polish for predictability. Like, are we really prioritizing a set release schedule over making sure the product is actually, ready?
It raises a really interesting question about their priorities. And frankly, it makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, they're prioritizing the marketing hype of a big annual event over, well, the actual user experience.
That's a really good point because, let's be honest, we've all been there. We get so excited about the new features, the sleek design, and then bam, the update is buggy, the battery life is terrible, and we're left wondering why we even bothered.
And that's why this whole fluid approach Gurman keeps mentioning is so intriguing. What if, and this is a big what if by releasing products when they're truly ready, Apple could avoid these kinds of PR nightmares?
I like where you're going with this because wouldn't it be better to wait a little longer for a product that actually works as advertised?
Exactly. And this is where Apple Intelligence becomes such a fascinating case study. Think about it. They announced this groundbreaking new feature alongside the iPhone 16. It's everywhere. Their website, the keynote, all their marketing materials.
And then it's a no-show. Not ready at launch.
Exactly. Can you imagine Apple pulling a stunt like that even a few years
Yeah,
ago?
can you imagine Steve Jobs getting on stage and saying, oh, by the way, that amazing feature we just spent an hour raving about, yeah, you can't actually use it yet.
Right. Heads would roll.
No kidding. But this new approach, it kind of signals a shift, doesn't it? It's like they're saying, hey, we're willing to prioritize getting it right over hitting an arbitrary deadline.
It's refreshing in a way. And it makes you wonder, as consumers, what's more important to us? The instant gratification of a new product, even if it's a little rough around the edges, or the assurance that when something is released, it's actually ready for prime time.
You know, that's a really good question. I think I might actually prefer a slightly delayed but polished product.
And that's the potential beauty of this staggered rollout strategy. If Apple can really commit to it, it could be a win-win for everyone involved. They avoid those embarrassing software glitches and product delays, and we, the consumers, get a better, more polished user experience.
So it sounds like we're talking about a pretty big change for Apple, but it's not just about software updates and AI features, is it? Gurman's article also dropped some pretty tantalizing hints about new hardware.
Oh yeah, he did. He always does. And this time around, it sounds like Apple's got some pretty exciting stuff up their sleeves.
For sure, like new MacBook Pros.
A refresh to the Mac Mini, which is
Yeah.
overdue, let's be honest.
And maybe even a new iMac, though that's still just a whisper for now. And get this, that's just the Macs we're talking about.
Right, we haven't even gotten to the iPhone SE revamp that's supposedly in the works. New iPad Airs, too. Honestly, it sounds like they're cooking up a tech feast over there in Cupertino.
Okay, so we've talked about this potential shift away from the yearly release cycle. We've dug into the how with examples like Apple Intelligence and this idea of a more fluid approach. But the big question is, why? What's the strategy behind this change?
Well, some people think it's all about quality control, right? Give their teams more breathing room to really fine-tune these products, work out those pesky bugs before they get released into the wild.
Yeah, because who hasn't had their phone turn into a brick after a routine software update? No one wants that.
Exactly. And it makes sense, right?
Right.
Especially when you consider how much emphasis Apple puts on their products just working. But then there's another theory floating around, and this one is really interesting.
Oh, lay it on me. This better be good.
It's about innovation, pure and simple. What if, and this is a big what if by ditching that rigid yearly deadline, Apple could actually take more risks, be more innovative?
You know, I never thought about it that way, but it's true. Instead of racing to add features just to have something new to announce, they could actually slow down, take their time, and develop some truly groundbreaking technology.
Right. It's like giving their engineers and designers permission to color outside the lines a little bit. We might see a whole new side of Apple, a surge of creativity that we haven't seen in years.
Now, that's exciting. But, you know, there's always another side to the coin, right? Could this more fluid approach actually backfire? Will we be drowning in a sea of constant but minor updates?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Could too much fluid actually dilute the impact of Apple's releases?
I mean, I love getting new stuff as much as the next person, but I also really value those moments when Apple drops a product that just blows everyone away, something that truly changes the game.
Totally. It's like, how do you create those moments of excitement and anticipation if you're constantly releasing new things? And more importantly, will consumers even notice those game-changing releases if they're constantly bombarded with smaller updates? That's something Apple will need to figure out.
So lots of potential benefits, but also some big challenges ahead for Apple. But there's one more thing we need to talk about. And this little tidbit from Gurman's article really caught my eye.
Okay, hit me with it.
This shift to a more fluid release schedule, it could actually lead to Apple making more money outside of the holiday season.
Whoa, now that's a game changer. We all know how much Apple relies on those holiday sales. It's like their bread and butter.
Exactly. So imagine if they could find a way to keep that momentum going all year round. That could be huge for their bottom line.
Talk about a power move. If they can pull that off, it could completely change how Apple operates as a business.
It's a bold strategy, that's for sure. But hey, we've seen Apple pull off some pretty incredible things over the years. Who are we to say they can't do it again?
Exactly. Only time will tell how this all plays out.
Yeah.
Will this be the start of a bold new era for Apple? Or will we look back on this as just another blip in their history?
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating ride. And we want to hear from you. What do you think about Apple's potential shift away from yearly releases? Will it lead to more innovation, or will it just be a recipe for update fatigue? Hit us up on social media and let us know your thoughts. Until next time, happy diving.